being aired on WBIN. We're very grateful to them for running this program live. They will also be running it at a later date.
Blitzkrieg them.
Welcome to the Congressional candidates for the 29th District. We will do the same format as before. We will start with an introductory statement, then we will ask the candidates questions. We're going to ask more questions in this section, so it will run for an hour, and then we'll let the candidates do closing statements. Each time they speak, we'll ask them to keep it to 1 minute, and our timekeepers will be here to give you a signal at 45 seconds and then at the end of 1 minute. So we've chosen the order in which they will give their introductory statements by randomly, and we invite Thomas Reed to go first.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening with you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to all of you for coming out tonight. And most importantly, I'd like to thank my wife, my son, and my daughter, Autumn and Will, and my wife, Jean, who are with us this evening. I come here tonight to ask for your support as we run for the United States Congress. About a year ago, on July 1st, 2009, I announced our candidacy for this position. At that point in time, the greatest concern that I had, and still hold dear, is that we are on a path of an American bankruptcy. If we do not get our fiscal house in order, America will go bankrupt, and it will not be here for future generations to come. And as I looked my son and my daughter in the eye, I said, that's not acceptable to me. And I will do whatever it takes, day in and day out, working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to stand up for what I believe in. And what I believe in is a limited federal government, a government that listens to its people and balances its books and learns to live within its means and stop the borrowing that's going to jeopardize us for the future to come. And I see red is for stop, so I will stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Janice Volk.
Thank you for having me here as a write-in candidate. This is a very big privilege for me. I am your regular person. I'm a grandmother, a mother of 6. I stood up May 24th and announced my candidacy simply because I had seen that there was politics as usual that was going to play out, whereas all of the nation, and not just our 29th district, was stating they wanted something to change. They had voted for change and was not receiving it. And as a farmer and as a wife, a grandmother, and just an ordinary citizen, I thought that this is something that I can do. So I'm here to affect the change that the people want. I want to be your voice in Washington.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Matt Zeller.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Matt Zeller, and I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress in your district, and with your vote, I will be your next congressman. It's very simple. Folks, 2 years ago, I was sitting in the middle of a firefight zone in Afghanistan. I was serving for my country, on behalf of my country, because in my family, we were raised with one ethos. You don't just talk about solving your nation's problems, you act. My generation is going off and fighting 2 wars right now. We have to begin to become part of our country's solutions to our problems. Here's what I offer you. We need leaders who are going to put country ahead of themselves. When I got home, I realized that with all the going out of business signs, despite the fact that there was a bank bailout on which all of our businesses were supposed to be able to receive loans, yet the that banks weren't lending, that the government of the people, by the people, was no longer working for the people. And see, that's our profound obligation as citizens. We're supposed to leave our country better than we found it. And that's my promise to you. I'm doing this for your kids and for my future children, to leave it better than we found it. Thank you.
The first question for our candidates relates to NAFTA and CAFTA. What do you think can be done about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and CAFTA, the Central American Free Trade Agreement? And the first candidate to answer this question will be Janice Volk.
NAFTA, when it was imposed, created a lot of dissension as far as the economic growth in this country. We saw jobs leaving in droves from here. And to be able to return that back, I'm not sure if the people of the 29th District want those types of jobs again. But I think that since it is done in decades old, that we can propel ourselves to be in the jobs that are well paying and offer some type of security for our families. I have a son-in-law that had been over in Iraq on his 4th tour, and he says that he may be a lifer for the Army because there's nothing to come back to. The people we have the most productive here in this district, and you're going to give me the answers that will solve this problem.
Thank you. The next candidate to answer the question will be Matt Zeller.
NAFTA and CAFTA have basically put you folks out of work, and we need to renegotiate them. You see, here's the thing about your tax dollars. You probably don't realize this, but we actually are using your tax dollars to pay for the outsourcing of American jobs. That's right, we subsidize the closing costs of factories and plants. That's got to stop. As your next congressman, I'm going to end the outsourcing. I'm going to begin a practice we're going to call insourcing. We're going to give companies tax credits, and we're going to give them incentives to bring jobs that have been outsourced overseas back to the United States of America where they belong. Then moving forward, I'm going to start looking at, well, our global economy and what they're demanding. The answer is simple: clean energy. Clean energy is going to be the industrial revolution of the 21st century. China is currently spending 5 times more on clean energy development than they are in defense. If we can be at the forefront of that coming economy, we're talking about sustained employment for the next 50 to 60 years. This is a district that gave us profound leaders: Corning, Kodak. We need to be that again, and clean energy is where we're going to find our future employment.
Thank you. Next candidate will be Tom Reed.
When it comes to NAFTA and CAFTA, what we're dealing with is we live in the reality of the world where we have a world economy. And what I stand for and what I will vigorously work for in Washington, D.C. is strict enforcement of those free trade agreements. When China doesn't even comply with the requirements to list their subsidies for their manufacturers, which is an administrative process, and what they say is that we're just not capable of doing it, and yet everyone looks the other way, that's not acceptable to me. When we have to wait for legislative action in order to deal with the Chinese manipulation of its currency, that's unacceptable to me. I am going to be a voice to enforce those agreements, to make those free trade agreements fair trade agreements, because I bet on the American industry, I bet on the American individual each and every day that we play on a level playing field. That's what we'll do in Washington, and that's what we believe.
Thank you. The next question for our candidates relates to tax incentives. Would you sponsor legislation that would give tax incentives to American corporations that would build in the United States rather than the Far East, such as China? And the question goes first to Matt Zeller.
Absolutely. As I said before, clean energy is going to be the industrial revolution of the 21st century. We just had a bill in the Senate that would have ended the outsourcing, and yet the Senate Republicans defeated it. Now that's got to stop. We've got to reward companies that bring American jobs back home. But going forward, I think you, the American people, should have a tax rebate to have your homes become energy efficient. Think about this for a second. If your homes are using less power, if they're using less heat, your energy costs are going to go down, and the person that we're going to employ to upgrade your existing energy, your existing infrastructure, is not somebody from China. It's your local electrician. For every dollar that we spend on our energy efficiency upgrades, we're going to put 7 back into the economy. That's going to mean that we're going to be finally putting the people of this district back to work, and at the same time solving our national security problem, which is our complete and utter dependence on foreign sources of energy, which has to stop.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Tom Reed.
On this issue, I support recognizing the issue that we need to make the American manufacturing base competitive again. A tax incentive in this situation is a good start. However, it's a short-term band-aid approach to the problem. What we're talking about is recognizing that small business and the private sector of America is suffering. And it's suffering from the tax burden and the regulatory burdens that are placed on it. We need to make government a limited government and learn to unleash the private sector again and allow it to do what it does.